I was driving home late one rainy November night, the kind of night when the sky hangs heavy and the clouds seem to scrape the tops of the hills. My route always takes me along Highway 47, a lonely stretch of road that winds between the marshlands of Hollow Bend and the dark pine woods beyond. It's usually quiet, just the occasional distant whine of a truck engine or the soft hiss of tires on wet pavement. I'd left the diner after my late shift around 11:45 p.m. and had about a 40-minute drive ahead of me. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the moon broke through just enough to silver the wet blacktop. I remember thinking how beautiful and eerie the marsh looked at night, all fog and rippling reflections. My heater was humming, the wipers making their slow, rhythmic sweep, and the radio was playing static-laced classic rock. Somewhere past mile marker 19, I noticed a small shape up ahead in the right lane. At first, just a pale smudge against the dark road. I slowed down instinctively. As my headlights closed the distance, the smudge resolved into a child. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing barefoot in the rain, wearing a thin white t-shirt and jeans. His head was bowed as if he were staring at the puddle forming around his feet. The sight hit me like a punch in the chest. My mind raced through a dozen questions at once. What's a kid doing out here at midnight? Did he run away from somewhere? Was there an accident? I eased my car to a stop a few yards away, rolled the window down halfway and called out, "Hey, kid, are you okay?" The boy didn't respond. He didn't even flinch. The only movement was the slight tilt of his head, as if listening to something far off in the woods. I felt the hair on my arms rise. I put the car in park, keeping my headlights on him, and stepped out slowly, rain mist beating on my jacket. "Hey buddy, do you need help? Are your parents nearby?" My voice sounded too loud in the silence. That's when I noticed something off. His clothes weren't just wet. They looked mud-stained and torn, like he'd been walking for miles. His bare feet were bluish from the cold, yet he didn't shiver. I took a cautious step closer. The boy slowly raised his face toward me. I swear I'll never forget those eyes. Completely black, not like pupils dilated in the dark, but entirely ink black from edge to edge. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Every instinct screamed at me to back away. The boy tilted his head a little more, and I heard a whisper, so soft I thought it might be the wind through the marsh reeds. It sounded like, "Can you take me home?" My rational brain kicked in. Maybe he was injured, maybe he needed real help. Against my better judgment, I reached out my hand and said, "Okay, I can take you somewhere safe." The boy smiled then, a small, unnatural stretch of lips that didn't quite match the expression in his eyes. He stepped forward, his bare feet not splashing the puddles but almost gliding across them. Before he could reach me, a long blast of a truck horn shattered the stillness. Headlights swept around the bend behind me, flooding the road in white. I jumped aside as a semi roared past, its tires spraying water. In that instant of bright light, the boy was gone. No splash of water where he'd been standing, no footprints leading off the road, just empty wet asphalt. I stood there for a long moment, drenched, staring into the fog. When I finally climbed back into my car, I noticed something chilling. My passenger side door was slightly ajar, though I hadn't opened it. The rest of the drive home, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that pale figure sitting silently in the back seat. To this day, whenever I pass mile marker 19 at night, I slow down without meaning to. And sometimes, when the fog's thick enough, I swear I catch a glimpse of a small shadow standing at the edge of the road, waiting. It was late August of 2016, just after midnight, when I was driving home from my cousin's engagement party. The venue was in the small town of Pine Hollow, and to get back to my apartment in Cedar Creek, I had to take Route 29, an old rural highway known for its dark woods and endless cornfields. The night was unusually quiet for summer. Even the crickets were hushed, and the air felt heavy, thick with the smell of damp soil. A storm had rolled through earlier, leaving puddles scattered across the cracked asphalt. My high beams cut through patches of fog that drifted low across the road like torn pieces of a white sheet. I was tired, still in my suit jacket with the tie loosened, humming along to a faint song on the radio. The road stretched ahead in a straight line, flanked by the looming silhouettes of corn stalks on the right and the dense tree line on the left. I hadn't seen another car for miles. That's when I spotted it. A bright flash of red and yellow ahead on the shoulder of the road. At first I thought it was a broken-down car with hazard lights or maybe a construction marker left behind. But as I slowed down, I realized it was a person, standing perfectly still at the edge of the road. The figure was tall, dressed in a full clown costume, baggy polka dot pants, ruffled collar, white gloves. The face was painted white, the mouth a wide, exaggerated grin outlined in black, with smeared red lips that glistened under the beam of my headlights. The clown's wig was wild and bright orange, damp from the rain. He, or it, stood with one arm at its side, the other holding what looked like a bundle of balloons, though in the night fog I couldn't tell for sure. The figure's head tilted slightly as I approached, as if curious about me. Every muscle in my body tightened. I instinctively slowed my car to about 25 miles per hour but didn't stop. My first thought was, some idiot in costume trying to scare people. As my car rolled past, I couldn't help glancing at the figure. Its eyes were fixed on me, dark, hollow-looking even in the glare of my headlights. I kept driving, heart hammering, telling myself not to be paranoid. In the rearview mirror, I saw the clown step off the shoulder and into the road, still holding the balloons. My stomach dropped. I pressed the gas, trying to shake the image from my mind. A few minutes later, I rounded a bend and came to a one-lane bridge over the shallow Cedar Creek. The bridge was old, with metal guardrails and no lights, just the dim moon glinting off the wet wood planks. Halfway across the bridge, my headlights swept the opposite end, and there it was again, the same clown standing motionless in the middle of the bridge, blocking my path. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching as the car skidded on the wet boards. My first thought was impossible. There's no way it could have gotten there so fast. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The clown slowly raised its right hand and waved. Not a friendly wave, but a slow, stiff gesture like a mechanical doll. I shifted into reverse, my fingers shaking on the gear shift. As the car rolled back, the clown took a single step forward. I nearly swerved off the bridge trying to turn the car around. I sped back the way I'd come, headlights bouncing off the trees as I fled down the narrow road. For several miles, my eyes stayed glued to the rearview mirror, terrified I'd see that painted face chasing me. The road remained empty. When I finally reached the main highway, I pulled over under a streetlight to catch my breath. My hands were clammy on the wheel. I told myself it had to be some prankster. Maybe there were two people dressed alike. But even as I tried to rationalize it, a deep unease settled in my chest. The next morning, I mentioned the incident to a friend who lived near Route 29. Her face went pale. She told me that for the past few weeks, people had reported sightings of a clown lurking near the bridge late at night, sometimes waving, sometimes just staring at passing cars. A few even claimed the figure would appear ahead of them no matter which direction they were driving. I haven't taken Route 29 at night since that evening. Sometimes I dream of that clown's hollow eyes and the slow, taunting wave on the bridge. And whenever I pass a cluster of balloons at a party or see a clown mask at a costume shop, I can't shake the feeling that if I turn around, I'll see it standing there again, waiting at the edge of the road. It was late October when I agreed to help my friend Jonah move some furniture from his late grandmother's farmhouse in Ashmore Valley. By the time we finished loading the truck, night had already settled like a heavy blanket. The farmhouse sat at the end of a winding country road surrounded by misty fields and half-dead oak trees. Jonah warned me the fog on County Road 12 could get so thick you couldn't see 10 feet ahead. But I brushed it off. I'd driven those back roads plenty of times. I left a little after 11 p.m., alone in my old sedan, with the radio off and the heater humming. The moon was just a pale blur behind the fog that clung to the road like drifting smoke. Every so often I'd pass a crooked wooden fence or the silhouette of an old barn looming like a dark ship on a gray sea. I remember thinking how quiet everything felt, almost muffled, as though the fog were swallowing sound. About 20 minutes into the drive, I rounded a bend near an abandoned bus stop the kind with a sagging tin roof and peeling paint. That's when I saw him. A lone figure stood just beyond the reach of the bus stop's single flickering bulb. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat that looked too thin for the chilly air. What caught my attention first was the mask. A stark white porcelain face with hollow eyes and no mouth, just a faint suggestion of cheekbones. The mask reflected the light like polished bone. I slowed down without meaning to, my headlights washing over him. The man didn't move, didn't even shift his stance, only tilted his head slightly as if studying me. The sight made my pulse quicken. Telling myself it was just some weirdo catching a late bus, I eased off the gas and kept driving. But something in my gut knotted up. When I checked the rearview mirror a moment later, the figure was gone. The road curved downhill into an even denser pocket of fog, so thick it swallowed the beams of my headlights. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, heart thudding. For a while, there was only the crunch of wet gravel beneath the tires. A few miles later, the fog thinned just enough to reveal the silhouette of an old wooden bridge over the marshy creek. As I approached, I caught sight of the same masked man standing dead center on the bridge. I slammed the brakes so hard the car skidded to a halt a dozen feet from him. He stood motionless, that blank porcelain face turned toward me, the fog curling around his legs. I honked the horn once. No reaction. I considered backing up, but the narrow road behind me twisted sharply uphill. No room to turn around. My heart was hammering as I fumbled for my phone to call Jonah, but the screen just showed no service. Then, as if sensing my fear, the masked figure slowly lifted his right hand. In it, he held an old-fashioned lantern, the kind you'd expect in a 19th century farmhouse. Its weak orange flame guttered in the damp air. He raised the lantern a little higher, illuminating the blank mask. I inched the car forward, hoping he'd step aside. Instead, he took one deliberate step toward me. That was enough. I threw the car in reverse, backing up as carefully as I could without losing control. My headlights caught the fog swirling violently behind me like something alive. After what felt like an eternity, I managed to reverse far enough to find a small dirt pull-off. I spun the wheel and headed back the way I came, my heart slamming against my ribs. A few miles down, I glanced in the rearview mirror again and saw the faint glow of that lantern light, bobbing slowly in the distance as though following me. I didn't breathe easy until I reached the main highway and the cell signal returned. When I called Jonah, my voice shook as I told him what I'd seen. He went quiet for a long moment before saying, "You know the old bridge you're talking about? My grandmother used to warn us never to cross it after dark. She said a farmhand drowned there in 1924, and they never found his body. I've avoided County Road 12 ever since that night. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in heavy near the valley, I swear I catch a whiff of kerosene and see, far off between the trees, the faint glow of a lantern swinging gently in the mist, always facing the road."